Hey guys, Big Apple here. I want to talk to you today about gun violence. This term that's always thrown around. So, what's gun violence? Well, from Webster's Online Dictionary, it says gun violence is the broadly defined category of violence and crime committed with the use of a firearm. It does not include safe, lawful use of firearms for sport, hunting, target practice, law enforcement, or self-defense. So, definition of gun violence really focuses too much on the tool and not on the violence itself. Victims of gun violence, gun violence, this and that. Well, to me, the violence is a little bit more important. So what about all those deaths annually from gun violence? Well, what's crazy is if you break down the numbers, you really find out where the crime comes from and how concentrated it really is. It really becomes obvious when you start looking at the numbers. Dense urban metropolitan areas, heavily populated cities, Chicago, New York City, New Orleans, Los Angeles, Hollywood, stuff like that. Majority of this crime is gang activity and repeat offenders. Forgot to put repeat offenders on there. But usually you'll see that, guy broke into home and was shot by homeowner. He had already been through the justice system, blah, 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 and just, it continues. I have a reference video amidst the noise here. It was very, very eye-opening to see how he breaks down the numbers, and he doesn't use any skewed facts, anything from a left or right media source. He uses the numbers directly from the FBI's website. Mass shootings are a tiny, tiny portion of these actual, yearly crimes. And while they're terrible, the majority of the crime that happens in the U.S. a lot more often really doesn't get the kind of coverage that a mass shooting does. So there are more deaths annually by blunt objects and knives than rifles. And that's the kind of thing that they say are bad, is you don't need an AR-15. It's capable of killing a lot of people at one time. It's dangerous, whatever. Police One, a website where law enforcement officers go. They have stories, and maybe they have a store, stuff like that. But they did a extremely comprehensive survey of 15,000 law enforcement officers, retired or current, across the United States. And I'll put the annotation in or put a link in the description, but you'll see that a large majority, like 75 to 80% of them, are opposed to any new legislation on firearms because they know that it's really not going to do anything. A lot of them were also around during the ban from 94 to 2004, and they saw that really didn't do anything. It didn't really have a reasonable, effect on crime. So what's the obsession with the gun? Well, they want you to believe that the gun causes you to be violent, but what's crazy is if you grow up around firearms, you see they're rarely used for bad things because it teaches you personal responsibility and restraint. When you go out into the woods deer hunting and you shoot a deer with a rifle and you see what it's capable of, you realize, okay, this is a pretty big responsibility, And when you're taught these things from a very young age, it really puts it into perspective and locks it into your mind, rather than the gun being taboo. And that's something else I oppose, is making the gun taboo to kids and stuff, and trying to hide them from bad things. You should just teach them to have responsibility and show them that if they use good judgment and follow the rules of safety every time that they handle one of these, it can be really fun and could actually save their lives one day. So obviously it's because they don't like guns. By vilifying the gun, they create something to hate. The gun is responsible for the deaths of those children. So you should honor them by, accepting to pass this legislation and supporting it. If you oppose the legislation, you're dishonoring those children. And you remember Obama getting on national TV and saying it was a pretty shameful day for Washington. But what's crazy is in Obama's first 4 years, he didn't care that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids and adults and moms, sons, daughters, husbands, dads, whatever, were killed every year in Chicago, which he says, is the target for basically how he wants gun control to be. The deception's apparent when they try to connect Chicago to a new town in Aurora. So they try to connect this constant gang violence and poverty and constant death to, hey, a lot of people died here at this mass shooting, and these are similar. There's no similarity there at all. And the deaths in Chicago, it's been pretty constant. I think it's real. I even think it's increased. I need to check those numbers, but I'm pretty sure it's increased. And he only started caring about that now that he wants to pass more stuff. So you can see the deception there. So if you remove the gun, what exactly do you have now? Well, you're still left with violence. By removing the gun, the root cause of violence is not addressed. The gun's merely a tool that's misused for bad things. You could easily have knife violence, bat violence, baton violence. You could use anything. I could use this table, and it could be table violence. I could drop it from a roof or something. Anything can be used for violence, and when you focus so much on the tool, you're really narrowing what it is that you're focusing on, and you're not addressing the bigger issue of just violence in general. So, referring to the dense areas of crime, it isn't difficult to see what the true causes of the real violence is. Poverty, gang culture, parentless parents, lack of values, to name a few, or like repeat offenders, and the revolving door in the justice system. Those are a few of the things. So these individuals will use anything to do terrible things. They'll use blunt objects, they'll use knives, they'll use their fists. They're going to get what they want, and they were raised in that, and they weren't taught values from a young age. So they're going to do what they want to do, and laws aren't really going to matter to them because they don't care about laws since they're criminals. So is America really that dangerous? Well, contrary to what you're told about mass shootings increasing or more people are dying every year, there's a 50% reduction since 1992, and that's when CC was started in Florida. So concealed carry was started in 92, and of course some politicians that are against it are saying that there would be blood in the streets. Arguments would turn to gunfire. But what you see is when you start trusting your citizens and you give them this responsibility, let them feel safe on their own terms, they're going to be responsible since they want to be good people, they have good values, and they want to follow the law. They're not just going to, just snap one day, because that doesn't happen. So I have it down here. Gun violence is a loaded political term. If you remove the gun, you're still left with violence. Just focusing so much on gun violence is really narrowing your scope of what you're trying to say this violence really is. You're trying to say, oh, well, the gun causes you to be violent. Gun doesn't cause you to be violent. The violence comes from many, many years of being taught the wrong things, not having parents, living in poverty, just like the things I said earlier. So this is Big Apple. If you have any other questions or stuff like that, just post them down there. Y'all have a good one.